Welcome to 9 simple ways to improve tone and clarity in emails. If we write a better email, we'll get a better response. Most professionals spend a great deal of each workday either reading or writing email messages. And now that more of us are working remotely, email has become even more central to our work lives. Setting the right tone in our emails and making them easy to read are essential goals. If our readers are put off by our emails, they're less likely to respond favorably, and we are less likely to get the response we need. If we're going to spend so much time writing emails, we might as well make them effective and save ourselves time in the long run. Here are 9 ideas to consider if you want to improve both the tone and the readability of your emails. The first 3 strategies involve making emails focused and organized. Your readers are getting just as much email as you. Clear and easy to read messages will stand out, and readers will be more likely not only to read them, but to respond as you would want them to. Start by writing subject lines that are clear, positive, and focused. Consider the differences among these 3 subject lines. The first is unclear, negative, and lacking in focus. The second is clearer and more focused, but it's still negative. The third is clear, positive, and focused. A good subject line lets the reader know you are serious and gets the message off on the right foot. Being focused and organized also means limiting the number of ideas or topics in a single email. If you're having trouble summarizing the focus of your email in the subject line, maybe you're trying to cover too many topics in a single email. If you limit the scope of your email messages, the reader doesn't have to juggle multiple ideas. When you focus on a single idea, your reader can focus too, and you'll be more likely to get your point across and your mission accomplished. The third way to be focused and organized is to arrange information strategically and to make your information both easy to understand and visually appealing. Each paragraph should focus narrowly on a single topic. And if a topic can be covered in a single sentence, that's fine. There's no rule against one-sentence paragraphs in emails. In fact, the notion that a paragraph has to have more than one sentence often leads writers to include additional sentences that are repetitive, adding nothing substantial to the meaning. An email is not a college essay, a legal brief, or a report, where one-sentence paragraphs are typically taboo. Make sure the introduction and conclusion are separate from the body of the message. It's fine for both the intro and conclusion to consist of only one sentence. Avoid visually daunting paragraphs and use bullets to help organize information for the reader. No one wants to read a message that appears dense on the screen because the writer didn't take the time to break it down into short, focused paragraphs. Take a look at this sample message. The words are meaningless because here our focus is on how the paragraphs appear on the page to readers before they even start reading the actual words. When information appears in thick chunks, the reader dreads having to slog through dense text to pull out the main ideas. But strategic paragraphing and bulleting not only make the message clearer and easier to absorb, but look more inviting on the page. Especially if you're asking your reader to do something unpleasant or difficult, don't add to the difficulty by making the message itself unpleasant to read. The next 3 strategies invite you to consider your audience. First, target your readers. Not everyone needs to read every email you send out. We all know people who insist on sending emails to everyone when they apply only to a certain segment of employees. If you get a reputation for being one of those people, after a while, your colleagues will begin ignoring your messages or at least taking them less seriously, having learned that most of the time your messages don't apply to them. Instead, take the few moments necessary to address specifically the people who really need the message. Go a step further and name them in the greeting, and of course be sure to spell their names correctly. Next, consider your readers' concerns. Perhaps you're proposing a new professional development program for your company's employees. The person managing the budget is going to have different concerns than the person handling IT, and that person's concerns will differ from those of the person scheduling rooms and dates. By anticipating your readers' points of view, you can address their concerns and increase their buy-in for your ideas. Finally, be mindful of context. Is the world in the midst of a global pandemic? Perhaps you should mention your hope that your readers and their loved ones are well. Do you know that your reader just completed a major year-end report that has been a distraction from other concerns? Then include a brief mention of that accomplishment as evidence that you appreciate that person's efforts. Even emails written to groups of people can end on a personal note, perhaps a word of praise for meeting quarterly sales goals or in anticipation of a long holiday weekend. In short, let your readers know you honor and respect them as people with complex issues beyond the ones addressed in your message. The last three strategies aim to make your messages both professional and friendly. First, include a personal greeting and closing. People pay closer attention when they are being addressed by name. When they see that the message was written specifically with them in mind, they expect it to be relevant to them and they pay closer attention. Taking time to greet your reader personally is also a show of respect, whereas jumping abruptly into your message without a personal greeting seems like a demand for the reader's attention. Complimentary closings are also helpful, not formal ones such as very truly yours and respectfully submitted as we might use in closing a letter, but less formal closings such as all the best, thanks, see you soon, or looking forward to our conversation. Include your name after the closing too. Your signature block provides helpful contact information, but it does not contribute to a friendly tone. The second strategy for making your emails friendlier is to use first-person pronouns, the pronouns that speakers and writers use to refer to themselves. The singular ones are I, me, my, and mine, and the plural ones are we, us, our, and ours. In school, you may have been taught not to use first-person pronouns, but business emails and letters are not academic writing, and first-person pronouns are not only acceptable but desirable. In an attempt to avoid first-person pronouns, writers often end up being vague and impersonal. The goal is for your writing to sound as if it were written by a human being, not a robot. Consider these two examples. The first sentence, this is a response to your March 18th inquiry about fees on your statement, has completely removed the human element. But I am responding to your inquiry suggests to the reader that a real human being has read the inquiry and is attempting to answer the questions. Your reply is due on May 21st is not nearly as compelling as we need your reply by May 21st. The second sentence reminds the reader of who specifically needs a response. The final way to ensure that your messages will be both professional and friendly is to use the passive voice sparingly. The Microsoft Word Grammar Checker will draw a squiggly line beneath passive verbs, but most people don't understand what the passive voice is or why it can be problematic. When we talk about the passive voice, we're not talking about the past tense. Voice is not the same as tense. We can have the passive voice in the past tense, the present tense, or any tense. Instead, the passive voice occurs when the subject of a sentence is also the recipient of the action expressed by the verb. Put another way, the subject is also the direct object. Let's look at some examples. In the sentence, your report is needed by May 21st, we have the action verb is needed. The subject is report. But when we ask ourselves, what is needed? The answer is report. Thus, report is both the subject and the object of the verb. The verb, therefore, is passive. In order to rewrite the verb in the active voice, we need to move the object behind the action verb and add a subject. Who needs the report? In the active voice, the sentence, the committee chair needs your report by May 21st, the subject is chair and the object is report. the subject is no longer also the object. One problem with the passive voice is that it fails to tell us the agent for the action. In our original passive sentence, we don't know who needs the report. We often see messages that end with the statement, "Your cooperation is appreciated." This sentence is passive because cooperation, the subject, is also the thing being appreciated. That is, cooperation is both the subject and the object of the action verb. If we write it in the active voice using a first-person pronoun, it sounds far more friendly. We appreciate your cooperation. Sometimes people write in the passive voice because they don't want to be the bearer of bad news. In the sentence, "Your request for an extended deadline has been denied," we don't know who has denied the request. Writers of such sentences distance themselves from the denial. This sentence is passive because request is both the subject of the sentence and the object of the verb has been denied. By adding in the agent for the action and putting the object behind the verb, we have an active voice sentence that is friendlier and less stilted. Saying instead, "The appeals committee has denied your request," not only adds a human element, but respectfully explains to the reader who specifically denied the request. Sometimes a passive voice sentence buries the agent for the action in a prepositional phrase instead of putting it in the subject slot. The conference site was chosen by the committee is passive because site is both the subject of was chosen and also the object. It is the thing that was chosen. The reader is left wondering who did the choosing until the very end of the sentence in the prepositional phrase by the committee. In the active voice, the sentence clearly depicts a committee choosing a site. Passive voice sentences aren't ungrammatical, and the occasional passive voice sentence isn't a problem. In fact, sometimes the passive voice is helpful. In order to be kind or polite, we may not want to name the agent for an action. For example, if I'm at a department meeting, I may not want to say Frida broke the copier and embarrass Frida. I may use the passive voice instead and say the copier has been broken. Or I may even avoid action verbs entirely and say simply the copier is broken. But remember that too many passive voice sentences in a document can slow down the pace, present the reader with fuzzy or incomplete pictures, and bore the reader. And so to summarize, first, be focused and organized. Have helpful subject lines. Limit the number of ideas in a single message, and organize strategically for readability and visual appeal. Next, consider your audience. Target your readers, know their concerns, and be mindful of larger contexts. Finally, be professional and friendly. Have a personal greeting and closing, use first-person pronouns, and minimize the use of the passive voice. If you found this mini lesson helpful, you might be interested in subscribing to receive a weekly email highlighting a short, narrowly focused issue to help improve writing and editing skills. Get It Right also offers in-person and online professional development seminars. For nearly 30 years, I have offered writing skills seminars to professionals across the nation in a variety of fields. By offering a Get It Right course, you'll be in good company. I hope to hear from you soon.